Please note that this virtual hearing is being recorded to comply with the public law for transparency. It will be available for viewing on Borough President Adams' website, brooklyn-usa.org, or on the One Brooklyn channel on YouTube. Viewers may join the hearing via the link and password on the following slide and request to testify via the WebEx chat function. Viewers may also submit comments to Ask Eric at brooklynbp.nyc.gov for Borough President Adams' consideration. Please call the first item and let us begin.
Hold on, Tanya, 1 second. We are having a few technical difficulties.
Okay.
Okay, Richard, you can go ahead and call the first item. I am going to share it now. Richard, make sure that you're not muted, okay?
He's on mute.
Yeah, click the unmute button.
Calendar item number 1, 200158ZMK.
This application submitted by 223 Troutman LLC pursuant to sections 197-C and 201 of the New York City Charter for a zoning map amendment to extend an existing C2-4 district over one zoning lot located on the southwest corner of Bedford Avenue and North First Street. Such action would facilitate the development of a 3-story building with 2 residential units and a 2,250 square foot commercial ground floor at 276 Bedford Avenue in Community District 1. Community Board 1 has not yet submitted a position on this application. Borough President Adams will hold off on making any decisions until he is provided an update by the board. Would Benjamin Stark, the representative for this application, please state your name for the record and present the application.
Hi, thank you for that introduction. Again, my name is Ben Stark. I'm an attorney at the law firm of Hershen, Singer, and Epstein, and we're working with now the project's owner, but at the time that we filed this application, we were contract vendee under the entity name 223 Troutman LLC, which is not to confuse anyone because this project is, as mentioned, slated to occur at 276 Bedford Avenue. As the introduction provided, this application would facilitate development of a new 3-story plus cellar building on an approximately 2,700 square foot lot at the corner of Bedford Avenue and North First Street in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. As mentioned, this building would have ground floor commercial, and above that, 2 units of housing. Next slide, please. So this application, if approved, would facilitate a new building that would mirror the most recent building to be on this particular lot. The lot has been vacant since, from what we understand, sometime in the 80s. So it's been vacant for many decades. And but before that, there was a 3-story mixed-use building having a ground floor commercial use that occupied the property before becoming vacant. Next slide. As you can see, the proposal is to restore the lot to its historical condition of as a mixed-use property, and we believe that this is in keeping with the commercial character of Bedford Avenue. Next slide, please. I had gone over the applicant name, but just to pull back the sheet a little bit. The project's principal is a gentleman by the name of Philip Miller. He's a local developer who's done a couple projects in Williamsburg, and mostly of around this same size, anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 square feet to 5,000 or 6,000 square feet or so. The project's consultants include Red Flux Architecture, who we've been working with on this rezoning application. Our environmental consultant on our EAS was BFJ Planning, and myself, I'm Ben Stark from Hirsch & Singer and Epstein. Next slide. We'd already kind of gone over a little bit of this, but the gist of this application is that we'll be mapping, or it is a proposal to map a C24 commercial overlay over an existing R6B district. So the R6B district, which is there today, is not proposed to be changed. The zoning lot would continue to have its maximum floor area ratio governed by the R6B designation, which allows 2 FAR and could facilitate on this particular zoning lot a 3-story building. The action before us that we've proposed is simply to extend a C24 commercial overlay, which is mapped within 100 feet of Grand Street, to extend it another 20 feet or so that it could capture the entirety of this zoning lot. As I note here, there's no proposed change in the permitted FAR, and the proposed building, as we spoke about earlier, is proposed to be 3 stories, 39 feet in height, and there will be no parking or residential amenity other than a terrace proposed for above that 1st story, or that 1-story building portion that we saw on a previous slide. Next slide, please. So I think it's important to bring everybody into where we're talking about here. We're in this image is an aerial, 3D aerial. We're looking at Bedford Avenue as it's cutting south to north through Williamsburg. You can see that the project site is a short walk from Grand Street, but also a short walk from Metropolitan and points north. Next slide, please. Bringing it down to street view, you can see the vacant property. Perhaps some of you are familiar with it. The surrounding context is quite similar to what is proposed, mostly 2 to 4 story walk-up mixed-use buildings along Bedford Avenue, giving way to a more residential context along the side streets, although there's a significant amount of, as we see in a lot of parts of Williamsburg, there's a significant amount of non-conforming commercial uses located along the side streets. You know, if we looked the other direction, this is looking west, but if we look the other direction to the east, much of North First Street moving to the east of Bedford Avenue is occupied by non-conforming uses. Next slide, please. This is looking south down Bedford with the subject property just to the right of the view. Again, a mixed use context that we're all familiar with. Next slide, please. This is now looking north of Bedford Avenue, just completing our introduction to the surrounding area. Next slide, please. Okay, this describes really what this action is proposing. So the small zoning map section that you're seeing on both the left and right, or on the left, shows what the existing zoning context is. Although it's not marked here on the left-hand side exactly where the site is, if you allow your eye to see where Bedford Avenue is listed, we can then see Bedford Avenue intersecting with Grand, and then the next corner up is North First Street and Bedford Avenue. And the interesting thing about just looking at this zoning map is it kind of looks like the corner of Bedford and North First is already zoned with a C24 commercial overlay, which is represented by the hatching. But in fact, because of that 100 dimension seen on the subject properties block, the commercial overlay is actually extending only 100 feet from Grand Avenue. So if when drawn out on a survey, what we find is that the subject property on the corner of North First and Bedford is only partially within the existing C24 commercial overlay, not entirely within it. It's about 10 feet of the property is located in the commercial overlay. So the image on the right shows what we're proposing. We're proposing to basically add a dimension on the zoning map that then would allow the entire property on the corner of North First and Bedford Avenue to be within the C24 commercial overlay. And we believe that this is rational from a land use perspective, considering that much of the balance of Bedford Avenue, at least on this block front and across the street and points south, is permitted to be developed with a building having commercial uses. Next slide, please. This gives us a more precise view of what we were just discussing. So the lighter gray hatching with the 100-foot dimension shows where the existing commercial overlay currently sits over this block. And as you can see, it's more precise than the zoning map we had just seen, and it shows that that there's a portion of the subject property that is not currently within the C24. So this action would allow that entire property to benefit from the C24 overlay. Next slide. I just want to bring it back to what the historical condition is, which again was a 3-story building with having ground floor commercial. And again, this is what we propose to do with this particular property. Next slide. The building at this point is conceptual. The project architect prepared a rendering showing some proposed materiality, but given that this is a zoning map amendment, our client is not wedded to any one particular I guess design as far as the materiality goes and window placement goes, but the general mass of this building, 3 stories, with a 1-story of commercial use, this is what will be designed and built. Above the 1-story commercial portion, there will be a terrace for the occupants of the apartment on the 2nd floor. There will be no residential amenity for the residential unit on the 3rd floor. Next slide, please. This is just the working plans that we have at this stage. Again, showing a 3-story building with two residential units above a commercial base. next and final slide. And that's it. So at this point, I think the gist of this action is relatively clear, but we are happy to answer any and all questions that the Borough President's office has, and to provide more feedback on our process to date.
Thank you, Mr. Stark, for your presentation. So I have a few questions on behalf of our office. The first question is regarding the commercial floor area. What consideration has been given to providing affordable space for the local arts and cultural nonprofit organizations?
Thank you. Given that this building is only proposed to have just over 2,000 square feet of commercial floor area, we're not able to at this stage commit any amount of that space to a local nonprofit or arts organization. We have to, at this stage of the process, be open to leasing the space to as the market would yield. That said, we have spent a considerable amount of time through this rezoning process working with some of our neighbors in the surrounding area, including having conversations with a local not-for-profit that has proposed to undertake a project nearby a couple blocks away. This is the People's Firehouse nonprofit. During our community board presentations, it became we were informed that the People's Firehouse was working to undertake a beautification project to an undeveloped triangular piece of property on the corner of North First and Metropolitan, in order to provide a open space for pedestrians and shoppers. And what was suggested by some individuals at the community board was, your action is to provide additional commercial foot traffic in the area. What could you do to perhaps give back in that frame of mind? If you're providing more foot traffic and the People's Firehouse is planning to build a public space for commercial foot traffic, perhaps you can speak to them and be helpful. So we spent part of February and March talking to the People's Firehouse, and at this point we've come to an agreement that we'll be funding the development of this public open space that's being managed by the People's Firehouse on the corner of North First and Metropolitan. So we've committed to donate $8,500 towards the purchasing of various garden equipment. There's been talk of like a small little stage so that people can make presentations. The executive director of the People's Firehouse and I have talked about using some of those funds to get water to be able to run to the garden area so that it could be managed properly. So it's something that our client really bought into, because we see the connection between it. We're not building a very big commercial space. It's just over 2,000 square feet, but there will be foot traffic who will visit it. And so we see it as like a balanced kind of tit for tat. We're adding foot traffic, and we're going to help provide a space where people can, take a load off, sit down, and eat a sandwich. So we're excited about that.
Richard, did you have anything to add? No? Okay. All right. So the next question actually deals with sustainable and renewable energy. It is the Borough President's policy to promote the use of sustainable and renewable energy resources focused on advancing a sustainable future in Brooklyn. It is also his policy to promote practices to retain storm water runoff. What consideration has been given, possibly in cooperation with the Department of Environmental Protection, the Mayor's Office of Sustainability, NYSERDA or NYPA, to the incorporation of blue roofs, passive house design, and or DEP rain gardens?
So, we had a conversation some time ago with staff members at the Borough President's office who had been talking about this in passing, and actually it spawned a whole conversation with our design team about this. And so we did a little research, and we're really going to continue to look into the DEP rain garden idea. If we understand it correctly, the rain gardens are built at the street level and really collect a lot of storm runoff. And we did a little research and noticed that that's something that other people have done in that surrounding area. So it would make a lot of sense for us to continue that progress. And it's kind of a perfect thing for us to participate in because the whole sidewalk is going to have to be replaced anyway with this development. And under the zoning resolution, street trees have to be provided for every 25 feet of frontage. So we're going to be building street tree pits. And so taking it a step further and doing the DEP rain gardens, it's a logical step for us. So we absolutely will be reaching out to DEP as our process gets further along. As you probably saw from our plan package, we're not at construction drawings yet. We're not quite at that stage. But as we start to get there and have to reach out to DEP for other components on the building design, that's definitely going to be something we're going to talk about. As far as a passive house design, that's not something at this time that we're considering. But the blue roof thing is interesting to us, and it's something we're going to look into further as the design process goes on, because we do have that one-story terrace, and so the terrace will, as you can imagine, the water has to drain off that terrace somehow. So we're going to look into whether we could provide the retention tank associated with that runoff.
Richard, you had?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to suggest that if you're having decking on the terrace, that you might be able to have the deck in essence step up from the inside floor, and therefore you create room for a shallow blue roof underneath the terrace.
Yeah, that was what we spoke to our architect yesterday about it, and that was exactly what he suggested, that perhaps we can do the step up like what you're saying. So we're right with you there. Thank you.
And we have one more question, Mr. Starr. So the last question deals with maximizing good quality jobs. So it is the Borough President's policy to maximize good quality jobs for Brooklynites. Could you please outline what steps will be taken to ensure the inclusion and participation of minority and women-owned business enterprises and local business enterprises in the process of construction on this site?
So our client has a history of working with MWBs. Unfortunately, we spent the last couple of days talking to the general contractors that they've used in the past, and we have found that that they've been working all along with an MWBE engineer, and it's someone that they're intending to use again on this particular project. But it was a bit of an aw shucks when we realized that the Asian-owned architecture firm that they've used in the past and who will be part of the bid process once we get to construction drawings, and it's a solely owned company that he's not certified. And same goes for a number of the subs, that they're not certified, even though they're wholly owned by people that would by individuals who will qualify. So to answer your question, and we're glad that this was kind of brought to our attention, that we're going to do this. We're going to see if we can be helpful to these subs that we have a history of using to bring them into the fold, to get them certified, because they should be able to take advantage of all that comes from being a true certified MWBE. I think it's kind of like, is it because they're smaller subs and they're not part of a public procurement process all the time? Is that why they haven't gone through the formal certification process? We don't know, but what we're definitely going to do, and I definitely want to reach out to the Borough President's office after this hearing, is see if I can get the names of some, whether it be the small business services or other or people, organizations in the nonprofit sphere, that we can connect these subs with to help them through that certification process.
Richard, did you?
Yeah, we'll alert staff in the building who coordinates in that regard. So we'll connect.
Thank you very much.
So Mr. Starks, I'm sorry, that concludes our questions. Thank you very much. So
Thank you.
Richard or Ina, are there any people who would like to speak?
There do not appear to be any individuals who have signed up to speak.
Richard, if there are no one
So
waiting to speak, if you can close this item.
calendar item 1 is closed. Calendar item number 2, 200056 ZMK, 200057 ZRK.
These applications submitted by the Bridge Rockaway Housing Development Fund Company pursuant to sections 197-C and 201 of the New York City Charter for the following actions. Affecting 9 lots on a block bounded by Newport Street and Riverdale, Rockaway and Thetford Avenues. A zoning map amendment to replace an M1-1 district with an MX district split into M1-4, R6A, and M1-4, R7A zones. Establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area within the rezoning area. Modify use regulations in the proposed MX district and apply inclusionary housing floor area ratios to residential uses. Such actions would facilitate a mixed-use development of 2, 6, and 7-story residential buildings with a shared industrial ground floor in Brooklyn Community District 16. The proposed project would provide 174 affordable apartments, including 87 supportive housing units, 3,040 gross square feet of community facility space, and 39,000 gross square feet of light manufacturing space to be managed by the Greenpoint Manufacturing and Design Center. Community Board 16 has not yet submitted a position on this application. Borough President Adams will hold off on making any decision until he has provided an update by the board. Would Susan Liviat, the representative for this application, please state your name for the record and present the application?
Hi, I'm Susan Wiviat. I'm the CEO of The Bridge, and thank you all very much for being here this evening, and we really appreciate your time. I want to say we're incredibly excited about this project. It is really, I think, it's a unique project in New York City, and I think it's a way of addressing 2 issues at the same time. One is the loss of manufacturing jobs and manufacturing space in New York City, and the other is the need, obviously, for affordable housing, including supported housing. I think what our goal as we started this project, and we really understood, and we heard this both from the Borough President's office and from community people, that they really didn't want to lose the manufacturing capacity that Brownsville does have, because it's a huge resource and it was sort of disappearing and being eaten up a little bit by things like storage facilities. And so we really wanted to seek a way to maintain that while being able to build housing on the same site. So let me just start. This is a rendering of what the building will look like. We do have pretty detailed plans, so this is a good sense of what we'll be doing. I don't know if it comes back later, but if you notice on the roof, there's a lot of solar panels on all of that sunny space up there. I think we can go to the next slide. Takes a lot of people to get a project like this done. The Bridge is both the developer, sponsor, the managing agent of the property, and the social service provider. We provide services for vulnerable New Yorkers in Brooklyn, the Bronx, and Manhattan. And we'll talk a little bit about what we do in a bit, but our co-developer and the general contractor is Mega Development, which also has a very lengthy history in terms of developing affordable housing and other kinds of developments as well. Greenpoint Manufacturing and Design Center is our project partner for the manufacturing space. It's really been sort of a delight to work with another nonprofit in this area. And I think that one of the really strengths of the project is that both the bridge and GMDC are sort of mission driven and really want to try to make the space work for the community. And then Think is our architecture and design and our project architect for this project. And we've all worked. One of the other unique things is the 4 members of the development team have been working very closely together to design the building from the beginning so that we can really make sure that we have a building that meets everybody's needs and is the best building that we can build for the residents and also for the people that will be moving into the manufacturing space. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. Oh, this comes out much better than it did on my Xerox. We're a nonprofit social service organization that has been in existence for 66 years. We currently serve approximately 3,200 people in 48 different programs located in the Bronx, Manhattan, and Brooklyn. We work a lot with people who were formerly homeless, people with serious mental illness, and people with substance use issues. We have about 1,400 people currently living in bridge housing, including 24 residential buildings. And I know this slide, some of the stuff gets very small, but we've color coded it so you can see where our programs are and what they look like. So we have 24 residential buildings and 500 approximately scatter site apartments. We have a large, we manage all of our facilities ourselves. We have a large facilities management division. I think we do an excellent job of maintaining our buildings. I think one of the reasons we do it ourselves is that we have a lot of control and we're really able to make sure that our buildings are maintained to the standard that we all want to see. We have 569 new housing units in development, including these. We have a project that is getting ready to open, hopefully in July in the Bronx, and another in the earlier stages of development in the Bronx as well. And we have about 550 staff at all levels throughout the agency in the 3 boroughs. Next slide, Brian.
I was staying on mute. My name is Brian Coleman, and I've been lucky to serve as the CEO of the Greenpoint Manufacturing Design Center, GMDC, for 17 years now, 17 years this month. GMDC is a nonprofit industrial developer. We own, manage, and develop industrial space to keep small manufacturers in New York City. Why do we do that? We do that because manufacturing jobs, unfortunately, there's a lot less than there used to be, but manufacturing jobs are still very, very good jobs with an average salary of over $50,000 a year. Some of our tenants' employees, frankly, make 6 figures. So manufacturing jobs, though there are a few of them, they're still very good jobs. They're an entryway to the middle class. Almost 40% of the people who work in our buildings speak English as a second language. So manufacturing jobs continue to be offer entry-level jobs, jobs that people can grow in to make a living and to raise a family in New York City. We've developed over 700,000 square feet of space. Currently, we have about 125 tenants and almost 700 employees of those tenants. We recently completed an 88,000 square foot project in Ozone Park, Queens, at $42 million in cost. We're very excited about this project, the Bridge Rockaway project, because it's really going to be something that's the first of its kind for us and the first of its kind for the city, quite honestly. Typically, we take dilapidated old single-user buildings and make them multi-tenanted buildings through extensive renovations like we just did in Queens. This building is obviously different. The existing building is not suitable for reuse, so it's going to be demolished, and we're going to have 39,000 square feet on the ground floor with approximately 12 tenants and upwards of 40 employees. So we're very excited about that. Could you turn to the next slide, please, if you don't mind? I really think this map is very telling when we talk about creating jobs for local people. So if you look at those white stars on the map, they're the locations of our facilities, 5 in Brooklyn and the new project in Queens. And if you look at those little black dots throughout the whole map all over the city, it'll show you that 92% of the people who work in our buildings are New York City residents, which is an impressive number. And if you look real close, you'll see the heavy concentration of those dots around our people, around our buildings. And so what we're showing here is that our facilities create jobs for local people, and that's just a win-win. 47% of the people who work in our buildings are Brooklyn residents, the highest percentage. Obviously, there's a breakdown there, but 92% of the people who work in our buildings are New York City residents. So even if you're not a Brooklyn resident, we'll accept someone from Staten Island or Queens, but it's just a large majority. So it's a great combination, and it really, frankly, usually helps us sell our projects because we're just creating good economic development locally that people who live locally can benefit from. Thank you.
Jack Esterson from Think is going to walk us through the next few slides about the actual building itself. Jack?
Yep. Susan, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, wonderful.
Good.
Thank you, everyone. Really great to, well, virtually be here. We are based in Brooklyn. Think is about 25 people. I've been practicing architecture in Brooklyn for about 45 years. And we are devoted to supportive and affordable housing, mostly affordable housing, with the idea of enhancing Brooklyn's communities in quality design. And this is the site, as Susan talked about. Next slide. And the building is very long. It's about 250 feet, both on Rockaway and Thetford, less so on Newport. And we took a kind of site-specific attitude about the building. Instead of just having a very singular block, we took care to use different brick, different planes, different brick textures, and window patterns to create a more lively and interesting building rather than just a simple box. And then also struck a balance on the ground floor between the security and privacy needs of the GMDC space with the pedestrian experience. So instead of just a single blank wall, we developed a highly articulated wall of articulated brick and glass to enhance that experience. Next slide. So that's the view from Rockaway. This is a really important view because speaking of site specific, there was a lot of thinking and discussion around the community garden, which is not part of our project, but that is the green space in the foreground at the corner of Rockaway and Newport. And our building kind of cradles that space on two sides. So we really took care, instead of just sort of solid blank walls, we articulated the brick, we added windows. In fact, in some places where windows weren't necessarily needed, and kind of articulated the main entry space up against the community garden, which is that glass portion in the center. So there are the ground floor is GMDC space. The roof of the GMDC space is about a 16,000 square foot garden between the two buildings. The building on Rockaway is 7 stories. The building on Thetford is 6. And again, this view shows the articulation with planes and brick and different textures to add more interest to the building. The main entrance is kind of in the center, a little bit right of center is the main entry to the residence. The entry to GMDC is on Rockaway, and the entry to the community space, which is about 2,000 square feet, is on Thetford Street. Next. And this view is actually Rockaway. And I'm sorry, let's see. Yeah, of course, that's Rockaway. And you see to the right, the community garden. And Again, just the two residential buildings with the garden in between. This is the ground floor plan. The light blue is GMDC space, so it's primarily their space. The green in the corner is the community garden. The yellow is the entry of the residence, the circulation. Of course, we have two elevator cores. That is why we have this kind of T configuration for the circulation. We have a two-story main lobby, which is filled with light, and it kind of connects visually to the community garden. And the darker blue is a 2,000 square foot community facility prominently located at the corner with quite a bit of glass and transparency. And I believe a tenant has not yet been identified for that space. But it's a very crucial corner, pivotal space in the project. Next. This is a cross section cut through the two-story main lobby that I just referenced. And I really love this image because it kind of takes you from the left, you enter the building, you're in this two-story space, really filled with south light, and you go up the stair and into this, we call it the link, which is where all the amenity spaces are for the residents. Since GMDC space is taking the lion's share of the ground floor, we really saw the second floor as being the main floor for the residents that would normally be on the ground floor. So you walk up this open staircase and the garden is facing you when you get to the second level. Or you can circulate around to community rooms. There's a laundry room, a computer room that all connect directly out to the garden views. Next. This is a floor plan of this second floor. So this is all sitting on top of the GMDC space. 16,000 square feet of landscaped garden is in the middle. That kind of U-shaped light yellow piece is circulation that connects the amenities. And the remainder of this floor in the kind of orangey color is our apartments, units. The purple area on the lower right corner are bridge offices for administration and services. So it's directly adjacent to the main public area of the building. Next. This is a view, excuse me, of the garden. You are actually in the garden facing south. Again, looking at what we call the link, which is a glass U-shaped portion, which is really kind of the heart of the building. It's where everyone comes together. We think of this as one building, not two. So the residents of both buildings can mix in this very open, transparent space, which opens out onto this garden, which we've programmed for many uses for adults and children and a lot of different activities. Next. Oh, okay. I think I'm
Thank you,
done.
Jack. Yes. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the kind of services that will be provided in the building. I just want to highlight a few things. One, as in all of our buildings, or almost all of them with one or two exceptions, there will be staff on site 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So there will always be someone there to work with our clients or deal with any other kind of issue that comes up. There will also be a live-in super. So in what we will be offering at Bridge Rockaway, which for the supported housing residents, which is sort of, generally what we offer, although I think we've got a few more services here. I think the sort of heart of it is case management, which is really helping our clients in the supported units access the services that they need and make sure that they're getting the help that they need and helping them manage whatever, whether they're seniors, frail seniors, or veterans with disabilities, or people with a mental illness, helping them manage what they need to do to take care of themselves. We'll also have vocational and educational services. As you can see, this is a picture of another one of our facilities, but we will have a small urban farm so that all of the residents will be able to grow vegetables or flowers or whatever they'd like. And we will have workshops and cooking classes, socialization and recreation activities. We will have peer support, again, to really help the clients with their case management needs. The Bridge has a large specialized program for older adults, aging in place as we call it, but it would work specifically with older clients, of which there will be a number here, who need sort of more intensive or specialized help in order to remain safely in their homes. And then this program will also be staffed with a full-time licensed practical nurse to really help some of the clients manage some of their medical issues, and again, help them make connections to medical services. Next. While the case management and some of the other services are really focused on the supported housing residents, all of the residents in the building will have access to all the amenity spaces, to the community and tenant meetings, to the outdoor, all of the outdoor space, the computer lab and resource room, and to any training programs that we set up, and then just the overall community activities and celebrations. And I'll say that we have 2 buildings right now that are mixed supported and affordable housing, where the 2 groups of tenants work really well together and do participate in joint activities. And it's actually been really, really successful. Next slide. What am I doing here? I'm just gonna, all of our, as I said, all of our buildings are housed, have 24-hour, 7-day-a-week staff. There will be, probably 20 Bridge staff attached to this program at all different levels, from sort of paraprofessional staff to professional staff, maintenance staff, a director. We are, very, very much want to work with the local community, and have had some conversations with the community board around how to sort of reach out to and make sure that we're letting the community know about the jobs that are available, identifying community members that are eligible that could apply for the jobs, and I think they're very interested in working with us. I mean, it's sort of good for us and for the staff, because in many of our programs, the staff live in or near the community, because it makes it easier for them. I mean, obviously, and particularly now, having to travel all the way across the city to your job, it can be difficult. And so it really works well for us. I think it makes it easier for staff to get to their jobs when they come from the community. So we very much want to work with the community around identifying people who would be able to, that we'd be able to have in these jobs. Hercules?
I think it's Brian. Can we go back to the
Brian.
last slide if you don't
Oh,
mind?
sorry. Brian.
That's okay. Hi again.
Yes, it's in.
I just want to cover some of the jobs and some of the things around the leasing and whatnot. So we typically average about 1 job per 1,000 square feet. So we're estimating that we'll have between 35 and 40 jobs. It could be more than 40 jobs, maybe upwards of 45. Probably wouldn't be much more than that, just because of 39,000 square feet, the limitations. But that is typically what we do. It's important to mention that this kind of protected manufacturing space is in high demand. GMDC's buildings are literally 100% leased right now, as is, for example, we're friendly competitors with the Brooklyn Navy Yard. The Brooklyn Navy Yard is 100% leased. So there's high demand for this space. This building would be our second smallest building. Our smallest building is 32,000 square feet. So in terms of managing it and managing the lease up, we're not daunted by that at all. Our tenants typically pay 20% below market. In some instances, they pay more than that because the market is just so far out in front of us. For this project, we're estimating rents to be in the $15, $16 range. We offer 3 things. We offer below market rents, which is really important. It's the second thing that I think really kind of captures our tenants, and that is our lease term. typical leases go between 5 and 10 years. And the reason I'm saying 5 to 10 years is depending upon the type of financing we use to fund the project. So if we typically, or very often, and hopefully in this case, we'll use new market tax credits, they have a 7-year term. So our lenders usually like us to bracket that 7-year term. So we'll go 8, 9, 10 years afterwards. That's why it's kind of an odd number like that. But that's really what tenants like. They like the fact that in New York, in Brooklyn, where there's been so much gentrification, there's been so much displacement of industrial businesses, that they can make a long-term home. And then finally, the last thing we do is we, not unlike the bridge, we describe ourselves as benevolent landlords. We are here to help the small manufacturers and the good jobs that they create. That's it. Thank you. The next slide, please.
Okay, Hercules, now it's your turn.
No, it's my turn. Hi, my name is Hercules Argerio. I'm one of the partners at Mega Contracting. As Susan stated, we've been in business for more than 30 years. We're 3 friends from college. We studied in Brooklyn Polytechnic, not too far away from the Borough Presidents office. And we mostly do affordable housing and supportive housing in New York. We have a very strong program as far as employing local and MWBs. We've partnered with Building Skills of New York and with other community-based organizations to coordinate the New York City higher NYC requirements. So what we do is basically on every site there is a weekly meeting between subcontractors and us. And that meeting is basically to figure out what's upcoming and how much work every subcontractor is going to do. During that meeting, one of the items in the agenda is we ask every subcontractor if they're hiring, if they need any additional people in their crews. We take that information, we funnel to Building Skills, and we ask them to filter out through Hire NYC, give priority to the community board that the building is in. So we screen local applicants, and we are able to hire a lot of them in our projects, either directly for us or through subcontractors. What we have found recently is that the new threshold of the safety training that's required by DOB, which is a 30-hour OSHA training, and now soon to be 40, has been a difficulty for people to get because it costs money. So what we've done in several projects, and we're willing to do here too, and planning to do here, is provide, in connection with the community board, provide 2 30-hour OSHA training sessions for people that are interested to come and get that training for free and get that certificate that they need to get to be able to be on a job site. On recent projects, basically our workforce in general, to give you an idea, we have on our sites in total, between our workers and subcontractors, we employ about 1,000 people. And out of that, the percentage of minority is typically on a non-prevailing wage project like this one, it's typically about 80%. And we strive to hire locally. We typically are able to get to give about 30 to 40 jobs to local residents, depending on the size of the project. And we try to maximize that number to the degree possible. As far as MWB hiring, we have been extremely active in pursuing MWB hiring. And as the gentleman said in the previous presentation, what we've done, and actually very successfully, is we've taken smaller subcontractors that do have the qualifications to be an MWB and helped them through the process to become certified, whether it's guiding them how to do their paperwork, urging them to actually do their paperwork, because sometimes that in itself is an issue. And we assist them with office support if they need to, in order to submit and get qualified for MWB status. So typically we solicit pricing from a database of MWB subcontractors as they're listed in the state and the city and various agencies throughout the city. We invite subcontractors to submit their qualifications and their pricing for portions of the projects. We have our qualification is online on our website, and people can go and submit their qualifications. Basically, what we're looking for is contractors that are actually tradesmen that have their own crews, and we encourage our buyout department to hire subcontractors that are Brooklyn-based and even more so community-based to the degree possible. Sometimes we split up a bigger project to 2 projects, or we ask our electrician, for example, where you have to have 1 electrician on a project, to seek second-tier subcontractors that are smaller MWB subcontractors, so we can get more people on the job. We also will be posting any invitations for MWB subcontractors to bid within the community board. And if there is a database of local subcontractors that is maintained by any group, we'll be happy to add them to our solicitation package, which also includes the Blue Book, which has a lot of subcontractors and a lot of MWB subcontractors. Susan, let you know.
I put myself on mute because they were doing the 7 o'clock thing out on my street where they do thank the medical workers. It was getting very noisy. So I'm gonna walk through the breakdown of the housing units. This project is a little bit unusual because it's a 50% permanent supportive housing and 50% affordable housing. We sort of worked very closely with HPD to get that balance because we thought it was really important. 52 of the supported units are for formerly homeless adults with mental illness. That's funded through the New York City 1515 funding stream. 35 of the supported units are for homeless seniors and veterans, funded through ESHI, which is the state initiative. And then there's 87 affordable, not supported units that include the 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. The studio units are what the supported housing residents will utilize, and the 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units are for the community. At the end of the presentation, as an addendum, we've also sort of added the breakdown of so you can see it, the breakdown of the units and the rents and the maximum and minimum income requirements for those different categories. So we can walk you through that later if you have questions about it, or you can, it's pretty self-explanatory. You can just take a look at it. But we've tried really hard, and we've worked really hard as we've sort of modeled the financing for this project to make the units as affordable as possible. And there aren't any units, even though, you know, we've again worked very hard with the city on this, even though they really want to see 80% of AMI, we have kept it to 70% as the maximum, and we have a lot at 30 and 40 and 50. So we've really wanted to make the units really truly affordable and affordable to people living in the community. Next, we're going to hear from Penny King, who is with Fried Frank and who's representing the project for the land use aspects of the project.
May I interject 1 second? I see
Yes.
some questions that I could answer. I'm trying to type answers, but I cannot send, so I'd rather say them. So there's a question, if I may, and I'm sorry if I'm...
Go ahead. Yeah, why don't someone tell us if it's not the protocol?
Yeah, so the questions from the community chat, that's public questions, so they could say testimony as part of the record. So that could be dealt with after the presentation and after questions from our office.
Okay, I just don't want people to think that I'm ignoring the questions that I see popping up.
All right. Penny?
Hi, good evening. So just to wrap up our presentation, we're seeking several land use actions in order to facilitate this project. The zoning map amendment would change the existing manufacturing district to a mixed manufacturing and residential district. So this will allow the site to include residential uses while maintaining the ability to have manufacturing uses here. And then we have a series of zoning text amendments. The first one would establish mixed use district 19, which will encompass the site. The next one will establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area permitting MIH option 1. And then most notably, we're proposing to modify the use regulations that are applicable in this particular mixed use district. And this will allow a broader range of manufacturing uses than would normally be allowed in an MX district in order to accommodate GMDC tenants and ensure that we really have a robust range of manufacturing uses while ensuring that they're safe to have residents in the same building. So we're really excited about that component of the project because it could be a model for future projects to maintain manufacturing uses in the city while increasing housing capacity. So if we go to the last slide here, as you can see, this is our timeline. We're currently in the ULURP process, and who knows what will happen with the pause on ULURP right now, but we would hope to be out of ULURP before the end of this year. And that would enable us to start construction next year. So that's the end of our presentation, and we're happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Penny.
Thank you for your presentation. Actually, the first question deals with the rents. Can you bring that slide? I know you mentioned it at the end.
Yeah, it's right after the thank you slide.
Okay, so that question is sort of like a three-part. The first is, what is the qualifying income range for the prospective households based on household size? The next is, what are the anticipated rents based on the number of bedrooms? And the last would be, what is the distribution of units by bedroom size?
Okay, so I think this chart will answer all those questions. We have each, why am I doing all this? We have each level of the, I wasn't doing that before. I don't know why that happened.
Maybe if you can just go through,
I'm happy to talk through the chart if folks would like. Sorry.
Why don't you do that? Because somehow I'm echoing, and I wasn't doing that, but.
Sure. So thank you. My name is Kate Gilmore. I work with Mega on the development side, and I'm happy to talk through the chart. You'll see it is incredibly dense because we wanted to accommodate a lot of information. And as Susan indicated, there are a broad range of income tiers in our project, but the majority of the units are serving households that are extremely low and very low income. And so you'll see, big picture, the rents in our project for a 1-bedroom, they range between $492 and $919. For a 2-bedroom, they range between $582 to $1,806. For a 3-bedroom, sorry. I think, Susan, you're on mute if you're.
The 2-bedroom was $1,600. The 3-bedroom was $1,800. And just for the 67.
Excuse me, sorry, 16. Yes, thank you. I apologize. 1,606. And for a 3-bedroom, the range generally for the project is between 662 and 1,844. And so, as you'll see in the chart, we tried to break this out. The income tiers are based on household size. So each income tier, we tried to outline the qualifying income range. And so you'll see that, for example, for the 27% AMI 1-bedroom, the rent is $492. And a 1-bedroom can be occupied by a household of 1, 2, or 3 persons. So for a single household, the income range would be between $19,715 and $21,492. But if the household were 3 persons, that income range would be modified to be between $19,715 up to $27,648. I'd be happy to go into further detail if that would be helpful, but I don't.
No, that was perfect. That was perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. So the next question deals with marketing strategies. So it's about 3 questions. Please identify what marketing strategies, such as designating one of the community's affordable housing nonprofits as the affordable housing administering agent, would be used in the tenant selection process in order to ensure the highest level of participation from Community District 16, especially those that are rent burdened or at risk of displacement. Would you want to answer that one first, or?
Yeah, maybe we can talk about that for a minute, and then we can go on. You know, that we have committed to assuming, of course, that it remains legal to do it. There is a preference in buildings, so that half of the units, there would be a preference for people living in Community Board 16. That preference is in court right now, and you know, we would love to see it maintained, because we think it would be great if we could really prioritize people living in that community board. We are talking to and have been talking to Community Board 16 around how we would work with them around both the marketing of the units and working with clients working with local community residents to help them basically manage their applications so that they're presenting applications that, you know, that show that they're eligible, because we've seen this in other lotteries. You get a lot of applications where people don't really know how to fill it out, don't know how to show what their income is, and sort of on the surface of it, they don't appear to be eligible. So we would be working with people to get them to understand what they need to submit and how they need to document it, so that we can ensure that the applications that we get from the community are applications that we can actually act on, and not just sort of let it be an accident. We would really like to work with other local community organizations, churches, and other community groups to make sure that we get the word out that these apartments are available, that hopefully there will be a preference for local residents, and that they, you know, a lot of people walk by certain buildings and they think, well, I could never afford that. And to really make them understand that, in fact, they in all likelihood would be able to afford it, and that we would want them to know that this building would be accessible to them.
So I think you touched on this part about this deals with also the marketing strategy, but in terms of a financial literacy campaign to assist the area residents. So I think you've sort of answered that. And the last question dealing with marketing.
Well, actually, Tanya, let me jump in. Because half the units are lottery units, the other half coming from the supportive, So that's outside of what you just discussed. But in terms of the supportive units from either the two different sources that you'd be working with, what steps might you take to try to help have this building be occupied by people that were from the community formally?
So, I'm sure having worked with DHS, they're not always very flexible, and the people have to come through Department of Homeless Services. What we have talked to the community board about, which we would love to work with the community, with the Borough President's office, with the community board around working with DHS so that we could work with people living in shelters in Brooklyn or in the surrounding community. And I mean, I have no doubt in my mind that there's plenty of people that would be eligible for these units that are currently living in that community or in surrounding communities. And we would be, we would love to be able to work with local community referral sources through their shelters. And I think for some of the senior and veterans that don't even have to actually 100% come from shelters, but to identify eligible people. The problem that we've had, because we've had this discussion about some of our other projects, particularly the one that's opening now, is that, DHS tends to be completely inflexible. And, so it's been, but it would be great if the community and the Borough President's office sort of, if we were able to work with you guys around going to them and saying, look, this is really important to the community, that we're targeting people who have been living in the community. Sometimes people have been in shelters in the community for many, many years. And it would be great if we could get them into permanent housing in the same community. And it's good for them. I mean, if they're in the community and they know the community, it makes a lot of sense. And if they're connected to any services in the community, it makes a lot of sense to keep them there. So we would very much like to do that. That's, we're a little bit in a box with that just because of the way their rules work. But I don't see any reason why we shouldn't ask or even push a little bit to get them to be a little more flexible. It's a very big project. It's a very unique project. And I think maybe even in that realm, it could be sort of seen as a model for how we work both with DHS and the communities to identify people living in local shelters that could be eligible for this housing.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So the last question dealing with marketing strategy is specific to the GMDC managed space. So what marketing strategy would be used for the tenant to tenant the GMDC managed space, including efforts to secure businesses from Brownsville?
Well, one of the things we're very lucky to have is an IBZ just about 3 blocks away. So we have a very good relationship with Daryl Holland, who runs the Flatlands Fairfield IBZ. And so we'll certainly rely on him for a lot of contacts. But we also work closely with New York City Department of Small Business Services. Michaela Crater runs the industrial desk there. She also gives us referrals. Mac Thayer at New York City EDC is someone that we partner with. And GMDC has been around for almost 30 years, so we have a significant connection to the community. And one of the reasons we're looking at this project is because we see that there's beginning to be more gentrification in the greater Brownsville area. Atlantic Avenue was rezoned, and there are a lot of businesses on Atlantic Avenue that have been displaced and/or will be displaced. So there will be, as I said earlier, this is not a very large industrial facility. It's only about 40,000 square feet. We expect that we'll get very significant local interest in the space, and we'll be happy to have it so that we can replicate the map that I showed you earlier to get local people and local businesses working in our building.
Richard, you had anything on that? You're good? Okay. Okay. So the next question deals with sustainable and renewable energy. The Borough President's policy is to promote the use of sustainable and renewable energy resources. And it is also the Borough President's policy to promote practices to retain stormwater runoff. What consideration has been given, possibly in cooperation with DEP, the Mayor's Office of Sustainability, NYSERDA or NYPA, to the incorporation of passive house design, solar panels, which I think I saw that in the previous slide, blue, green, or white roof covering and or DEP rain gardens?
Jack, yeah, Jack, why don't you jump in? And I mean, we do have a lot of sustainability features. I will say that we'll talk about, we're doing a lot in terms of sustainability and energy efficiency. We did in our project in the Bronx take a very serious look at passive house. We had the architect for that building basically, sort of really walk through each feature of passive house and what it would entail in terms of changes. And quite honestly, it was prohibitive in terms of cost. And so we sort of took a different approach with this building, which was try to look at what the most, to make it sort of as green of a building as we could, but realistically within the construct of what was affordable. So I'm going to let Jack talk about some of the features that we're incorporating.
Okay, thanks, Susan. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. We have actually done passive house with HPD and affordable housing, and Susan is correct. It is certainly not a cost-neutral solution, and maybe they can speak more about the financial aspects of it, but it adds a significant amount to the budget of the project. So we are not planning a passive house design, but we are adding a number of sustainable features to the building because we really believe in sustainable design to the maximum degree we can on every single project. So as the first visual showed, we're doing an enormous amount of photovoltaic solar panels on the two main roofs, which is at least 15,000 square feet. So it's not a token gesture. It's almost the entire roof's surface of the building, which will generate a lot of renewable energy. On the third floor roof, which is the roof of what I called the link, which is the amenity hub, is a green roof. Not only for sustainable reasons, but also it is a view that is seen from almost all of the apartments that face the courtyard. So it's a visual and a sustainable solution. And it's a good sized roof in that center section. The 16,000 square foot landscaped courtyard that I referenced earlier is in and of itself a sustainable thing to do, in the fact that it, and
oh, Jack froze.
It really helps to mitigate what they refer to as the heat island effect that is everywhere in any major urban center. So it essentially cools the air and the ground plane. Of course, we are abiding by the regulations of enterprise green communities. We're working with Bright Power, which is a top energy consultant that we've used before, with Enterprise and NYSERDA for the photovoltaic panels, funding of that. We are also using LED lighting throughout the entire building, which saves a great deal of energy costs, as well as using a high degree of sustainable interior materials that are VOC free and vinyl free and renewable. We have recently been talking about rainwater retention, recycling rainwater for irrigation of the garden, and we've been talking about rain gardens. And those are things that are doable. Perhaps Mega would like to talk more about that in terms of the possibility of incorporating that in the project. But that is kind of generally what we are looking at with the project in terms of sustainability.
And I know we're also looking at, through DEP, exploring some funding for it as well. Right, Carol?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Thank you. So that concludes our questions from our office. Richard or Ina, if you could look into the chat to see who would like to testify. So we're not allowing you to respond to questions, but just to let them testify. Richard or Ina?
Okay, hello, Tanya. I don't see anyone who is requested to speak. However, I was under the impression that there would be community members testifying on this project.
I guess if
We
there's no
hope to get a few community members out, but because of the restrictions and whatnot, it was a little bit difficult for us to corral some of our tenants. What you will see is at the end of the slide presentation for both the bridge and for GMDC, basically support letters from some of our constituencies. So if you go back into the slides, you see letters from several of our tenants.
The other thing we could do, I was going to say, Carol, is we did a presentation for some of, we were doing we were supposed to do a walkthrough of one of our other buildings for some community board 16 members, and we did it virtually last week, and we had some short recordings from some of our residents that we would be happy to share with you if anybody would like to see that.
We were supposed to have Peter Rodriguez, who is the manager of one of our buildings, who lives locally to the Brownsville project, was supposed to be on to testify. Dr. Tanya Blackwell, who is with the Arthur Ashe Institute for Urban Health, which we worked with on a health action plan, was supposed to be here to testify. Sean Mitchell, also from the Arthur Ashe Institute, was supposed to be on. I don't know where they are, but they were going to be part of the testimony at the end of this presentation. So I don't know.
So the record remains open after tonight. So Tanya, in her closing remarks, will read the email that testimony can go to. And given that we're in pause, there could be a lengthy period if you want to submit emails.
Okay, great.
So I see
Thank you.
Sean Mitchell. I see someone popped up.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see Ina? I just saw someone's name.
Sean, he's from the
Arthur Ashe Institute.
Okay, so are you on mute? I don't hear anyone.
Yeah. Maybe he's on mute.
Oh, okay. He's saying he could submit a letter. He's unable to share video or control audio.
All right.
Okay, and I think that, I'm sorry, I think that was Peter Rodriguez sent me an email saying he also is on mute and he can't speak. So we will provide the written testimony as a follow-up.
Okay, no problem. And so I actually am about to close the hearing, but I failed to do this at the beginning. I didn't introduce myself or anyone from the Borough President's office. I realized that. So I am Tanya Cantlow. I'm the counsel to the Borough President. We also have Richard Barrick, who is our land use director, and Ina Gusenbell, who's the land use coordinator. So I apologize for not doing that at the beginning. The hearing on these items is now closed. Thank you for participating in this remote public hearing. Borough President Adams will review the applications heard today and submit his recommendations to the City Planning Commission for further consideration. Borough President Adams would like to take this opportunity to remind you that the City Planning Commission will hold a public hearing on these items, which will be announced at a later date. Borough President Adams would also like to remind viewers that comments can be submitted by email to askeric@brooklynbp.nyc.gov. This hearing is now adjourned. Everyone have a wonderful night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks a lot.
Okay, good night.
Night.
Thank you.
How do I get off this?
How do I get off this is right?
Find the next.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for being our guinea pigs tonight.
Okay. By the way, Dr. Tanya Blackwell she's on mute and she's been here the whole time. So we will have them submit testimony written to the email address. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night.
You did it.
Yeah, I realized I said I didn't even, we didn't introduce, I'm like, I didn't introduce anyone.
That's because I messed everything up with the rhythm with me opening 3 screens.
Yeah, it's,
Not
but I
seeing.
realized it. I said, oh, I'll have to introduce us at the end. So at least that's of the record.
So we just have to figure out the couple people that weren't able to get on, whether it was at their end, because the next time we do this, we're probably gonna have speakers.
Right, because David and Brianna had to leave, so they made me the host. They had to, because of the curfew, they had to get home. I guess they were in the office. Yeah, but I
All right.
don't know. Okay. All right, so take care.
Be well.
All right, bye-bye.
So probably the last days of June or early July, we may try this again with 2 more items.
Okay, no problem.
All right, take care.
Bye.